Who is the most underrated player on every team that sits atop the standings? Welcome to the Just Baseball Show. That's Aram and I'm Peter Apple, and we are here to answer that question. We're also going to put on our Texas Rangers hats because one of
Literally.
our talented writers on justbaseball.com, Wes Jones, just put out a article that details the track that the Texas Rangers have to go through in order to make the playoffs. Aram and I are going to see, can they? We're also going to look at Kumar Rocker, another Rangers pitcher who is lighting up the minor leagues. And we end the episode with Aram's famous prospect report. And it is all brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. Remember, folks, download BetMGM on iOS or Android and use code JustBaseball when you do. Why? You get a first bet offer up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if it were to lose. So if you win the bet, good for you. You want to bet. I want to bet because of freaking Josh H. Smith and the Texas Rangers yesterday. But if you lose, thankfully, you'll get it all back in bonus. But remember, gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older. Terms and conditions apply. Aram, Wednesday, August 7th. How you doing?
Doing great. It's good to be back home and settled in, like we talked about on the last episode, and kind of get back on the regular schedule, as fun as the road trip was. And it's one of those weird combinations now where I feel like we're at the final stretch of the season, but there's also still like a lot of ball to be played. So it's this weird combination where I feel like, again, it is that final stretch, but then you got 50 or so games left. So there's still so much that can happen, so much that can shuffle around. And I know that's going to be the theme of what we talk about with the Rangers, but you're seeing a lot of teams now call up prospects as well, which we'll get into in the prospect report, to kind of help that push here and get through these dog days. So I think this is going to be a fun stretch of a couple of weeks where teams start to maybe separate themselves a little bit.
We truly are in the midst of the dog days. We have about 50 games left in the schedule. And this is kind of the point where, unless you're a diehard baseball fan, you're likely checked out a little bit, right? Listeners of the Just Baseball Show, they're anything but checked out. But maybe other baseball fans, they're taking this time to just enjoy the summer. Once September rolls around, they start to get back into it. So what we wanted to do in this episode was highlight some really under the radar players who have been doing really well for the best teams in baseball all year, but just haven't really gotten their shine. We've covered underrated teams on the crap teams. We've covered underrated players at the beginning of the season, but we haven't checked back in yet. And also a team like the Rangers, right in the middle of the dog days, can they make that next leap? So without further ado, I say we get straight into the most underrated players on every team that leads the division right now. So we could go from the American League East down to the National League West, or we could work from the National League West up to the American League East. Where would you like to start?
Let's start American League East.
American League
The
East.
interesting one there is, do we have to go with two, or do we just give the Orioles the edge there?
Technically, as we are recording, they are tied for first place according to the standings. So I did bring them both in. Now, slightly biased, potentially wanted me to include the Yankees, but damn it, they're tied atop the division, so we have to go through them. I can give you my underrated Yankee first, but I would love to hear which one you picked.
Yeah, and it's all relative. Like, some teams just don't have that many underrated players, like in general. And I think the easy, like, just to kind of set the groundwork here, like the easy thing to do would probably just be plucking a bullpen arm that no one has heard of and has been just shoving, which happens all the time, almost for like every team, at least one player every year. So like I kind of wanted it to be like a relative side of things as well, where, yeah, sure, it might be a more well-known name, but at the same time, like, relative to maybe what he is not receiving in terms of fanfare, he's underrated. I do want to hear your Yankees player first, though, and then I'll chip in.
So unfortunately, like we do with all of these episodes, we don't collab on our answers beforehand. So you just broke something down that you don't want to include a bullpen arm because you think a lot of teams have.
Well, not all of them, not all of them. I'm just saying, like, you could technically do that for like most teams. Some teams,
100%.
their most underrated player is going to be a guy that maybe has made a huge difference in the bullpen, but like, you could probably find someone on every team, but there's different impacts, I think, based on leverage and things like that. I think when you look at the Yankees team, the bullpen's probably the first place I go anyways.
Exactly. And that's where I go for the most underrated player on the Yankees this year. Has to be Luke Weaver.
Yeah.
Leads the Yankees bullpen in innings with 63 at a 2.86 ERA. fastball, changeup, cutter. Opponents are hitting under 200 against all of those pitches. So how did he do this? Because he had an ERA over 6 the last 2 seasons, then went over to the Yankees bullpen and has dominated. Well, he ditches his sweeper, his slider, and his knuckle curve, starts throwing that classic Yankees cutter more. It's harder than it ever was, and it's been fantastic. Out of the bullpen, he's averaging 95.5 miles an hour on the fastball instead of 94 miles an hour as a starter. And the reason, to your point, where a lot of teams just have a great bullpen arm and it's cool to highlight them because they don't get a lot of fanfare, but the Yankees bullpen in particular, with Clay Holmes being the person that Yankee fans want to send out of town, even though he still is a great reliever, but is he that true lockdown closer? Potentially. But with the Yankees bullpen, it's been a lot of Michael Tonkin dominating. But this Yankees bullpen has been in the upper half of the league. A lot of it is due to Luke Weaver, who is really, if we're talking about high leverage or low leverage, he pitches in all the leverages. He's in
Yeah.
the
No,
eighth, he's in the ninth, he's in the sixth, he's in the fifth after a pitcher has a bad game. He's in the 10th and 11th inning covering those innings. He's pitching anywhere Aaron Boone needs him. And to be at 63 innings already, like most
yeah.
of the top of the line relievers, anywhere from 40 to 50, he's at 63, holding an ERA below 3. He has been so important for the Yankees. It's hard to even state how much that importance is.
Yeah, so it's funny. I wish that we almost started. We probably should have started with the NL West because of the fact that the precursor I put in here, where it's like, okay, I don't want to go bullpen arm for every single team. The Yankees, though, in this instance, I don't think there's a better example of an underrated performer than Luke Weaver because you set the scene perfectly. But how about the fact that yes, Clay Holmes is getting the ninth way more, but you could argue that Luke Weaver's been more valuable considering he's thrown 17 more innings. And also, the ERA is pretty much the same. That's a crazy role for him to fill. I mean, nobody else is within, I think, 8 innings of him in that bullpen. I was going to go with Michael Tonkin just because, I legitimately had no one had any expectations from this guy. He's had a 5 ERA the last several years. And, he's been more in the lower leverage aspect of things. He's been putting the high leverage a little bit more. I feel like you'd know better than me over the last few months and in the back half of the season. But I think Luke Weaver is the obvious answer. But I wanted to go with Michael Tonkin as well, just because he throws really weird. I don't think anybody had any expectations from him this year. And you could make the case, I mean, with the usage as well, he's been the third most valuable arm in this Yankees pen? I know Canley's been more dominant, but I mean, Tonkin's thrown 55 and a third innings. That's the second most on the team. And he's got, basically a 3 flat ERA.
Yeah, Canley's been better in the innings that he's thrown, but just because he was hurt at the beginning of the year, Michael Tonkin has been a freaking beast for the
Yeah.
Yankees for no good reason. Absolutely none, because he was on 7 different teams. He was terrible for 7 different teams. Then he comes over to the Yankees and has been one of their best overall relievers. I know fans of the Braves or any other teams that he's been on are thinking to themselves, how in the world is that possible? Reds fans, how in the world is Luke Weaver good?
Yeah.
Got to give a lot of credit to Brian Cashman and the pitching development over at the Yankees, because Brian Cashman gets a lot of shit, but his ability to find garbage men and put them in the bullpen, put them through the Matt Blake system, it's been incredible what they've been able to turn terrible pitchers for other teams into lockdown relievers for the Yankees. While teams are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on their bullpen, the Yankees are grabbing guys you've never heard of and turning them into legit relievers. So should we move on to the Orioles now?
Yeah, let's do the O's.
All right, let's do the Baltimore Orioles. For me, I'm just going to keep pounding the desk on this guy, because when I think of the Orioles, and when I think a lot of people think of the Orioles, your eyes go to Gunnar, deservedly so. Your eyes go to Corbin Burns, deservedly so. Probably Adley. Or maybe you're intrigued by the young talent, from Jackson Holiday to Kobe Mayo just getting called up. Even the guys who have been with the big league team all year, like Jordan Westberg or Colton Cowser, who is really, really heated up in the last few weeks, even month now. He has been pillaging baseballs. But who's leading this team in home runs and RBIs? Anthony Santander. 32 jacks, 75 RBIs. He's second on the team in WRC plus at 135. He's fourth among all of their position players in F4 when he's not even that good of a fielder. That's how good the bat has been. And this is not your classic, oh, well, Peter, he just leads the team in home runs. Is he a good hitter? I don't know, 35% above league average in WRC plus, 18% strikeout rate. He's not one of these big old sluggers who's striking out 30% of the time. 18%, that's in the upper third of the league. Anthony Santander. Like, until people start to say, oh, Gunnar, Adley, and Santander, I'm just going to keep calling him underrated because I think he just is.
He is. He's gonna get paid this offseason. And I was just rummaging through my backpack because I wanted to show you the lowest, like the cheapest addition I made to my collection, and kind of an example of why he's underrated. It's an Anthony Santander Bowman Chrome Auto refractor. So that's out of $4.99. I got this for $7. Like I got two of them for like $15, so $7.50. Because he's so underrated, but he's going to go get paid this offseason, and he's been an absolute monster. So again, it's relative. Like we just talked about Luke Weaver, but there's nobody in the Yankees offense that you're going to say is underrated really at this point. So it's
Wells,
different,
I guess.
Yeah, and he's been getting hosed for the first half of the year about it ball luck wise. I think Wells would be a great one.
Yeah.
But again, there's going to be like higher profile guys that we talk about, but I still think he's not high profile enough. I shouldn't be able to get his Bowman Chrome Auto refractor for $7.50. So again, just kind of shows you. And I'm going to go with kind of a little bit more of an obvious pick too, but at the same time, I think it's going completely under the radar what he's doing this year in terms of what we've seen relative to the rest of his career. And it's Ryan O'Hearn. Like Ryan O'Hearn has cut his strikeout rate in half, and he's walking twice as much as he walked last year. And last year was his breakout offensively. Like this was a guy that was a journeyman negative WAR pretty much every single year, aside from 2018, where he makes his big league debut, goes crazy, could never find it since then. And then in 2023, puts it together, puts up a 118 WRC plus, but he did strike out 22% of the time. He walked 4% of the time. This year, he's on pace to beat that 14 home run total. He already has 12. He's got a 127 WRC plus, but he's up the walk rate to 10%, and he's cut his strikeout rate to 13%. Yes, some of that is, kind of putting him more in positions for success, maybe not facing left on left as much. But I mean, he is thriving in this platoon role and really end up playing more than, your average platoon guy anyways, but just thriving in a role where you can have him and Mountcastle, both in the lineup at the same time often, but sometimes, split in time where they combine to just absolutely mash. I just think you got to be thrilled with what you're getting from O'Hearn. And I think he's a big reason why this Orioles offense, like this is one of the best teams in Major League Baseball. He's hitting cleanup every single game, fourth or fifth, just about every single game. So I think O'Hearn deserves a little bit more love. Again, I know he got it last year, but he's leveled up even more this year as a 31-year-old. So I love to see that.
Created the perfect platoon. Ryan O'Hearn is an 824 OPS against righties. Ryan Mountcastle has an 829 OPS against lefties. Ryan Mountcastle is hitting 300 against lefties. So basically what you have here is a mid 850s hitter at first base, no matter which pitcher is coming at you. It's extremely valuable. Yeah. All right, let's move to the Cleveland Guardians. I think there's an obvious choice, which almost makes me think he's not underrated, but damn it, he's underrated. Ben Lively of the Cleveland Guardians. 3.42 ERA. That is the best on the team, including our guy Tanner Bybee, who does have a 3.48, but best on the team. And he's the only other starter besides Bybee with 100+ innings. And it's not like he's some bag of bones that's due for a million runs of regression, like we see sometimes with these older pitchers who weirdly catch fire and then just stink. He's got a 3.64 expected ERA. Now, there's some stuff in the underlying metrics that doesn't make me think he's going to put up a 3.42 this year, but at the same time, I think it's still going to be under 4. And we have to remember that this guy started with the Phillies in 2017, goes to the KBO in 2019, back to the Royals for 1 inning in 2019, and gives up 3 runs in that 1 inning. Then he's back to the KBO in 2020 and 2021. Then to the Reds, where he put up an ERA over 5 last year, and then this year with the Guardians. He's throwing his sinker way more than his sweeper, which was the opposite of what he was doing. But there's not really a huge pitch usage tweak. I think he's just on a freaking heater arm, and he's underrated.
I think he kind of saw it. You saw it at the end of last year through stretches, and then it seems like an opportunity where they identified a guy that was kind of undervalued, as we're talking about here, and has performed quite well for them. I mean, where would they be without him too? Like that's the answer for me, no doubt too. I guess if I wanted to reach a little bit further, just one other name that hasn't been great, but I do think has filled a role for them and just helped them survive in a couple positions where they've, especially in center field, where they've been, stuck there for a lot of the year. Like Tyler Freeman hasn't been great, but given where I've explained, I've thought he was a guy that didn't really even need a significant big league role at all. He's going to finish the year probably as like a 1.2 win player, maybe a little bit less than that. But he played 89 games in center field. This is a position he has not played much at all. I mean, in the major leagues, it was the first time he's played it. He had just started to get experience out there later on, late in his minor league career. So the fact that he went out there and didn't suck and was able to hold it down for them when Miles Straw just became an unusable option and can give you like a 92 WRC plus. Again, I know that that's not exciting. 7 home runs, 10 stolen bases, whatever. But they plugged somebody into center field that wasn't an utter disaster, which, I mean, if he didn't do that, I don't know. Maybe they put Quan back out there. Maybe they keep trying, Angel Martinez or other prospects that they're rushing out there. Like he bought them some time to sort stuff out, which I do think is underrated. Again, doesn't compare to Lively, but I do think that it's worth noting that Tyler Freeman did help kind of hold it down for them in a position that he's never really played.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the Seattle Mariners. The Mariners were tough because, I mean, who in their rotation, in my opinion, is underrated at this point. Like, we all know the front three. You know that Brian Wu, when he does pitch, is absolutely electric. And you know that Bryce Miller is a 3.62. If we're looking at the bullpen, like, I think Andres Munoz's year as a closer has gone under the radar, considering I don't think he made the All-Star team, even though I thought he should have. But, of course, there's always these All-Star snubs with relievers. But whatever, he's got a 1.22. Mariners bullpen has been good, but I don't see someone popping out as like, oh my gosh, this guy is just so unbelievable. So I go to the offense. And offensively,
we're going to have the same
very
answer.
good.
I know.
We're going to have the same answer. It has to be Victor Robles.
It has to be. What the hell? This was, everyone likes to say that wasn't on my bingo card. This wasn't within 10 miles of my bingo card.
We were playing like a different board game. We were playing checkers and someone else was playing bingo and like got Victor Robles. And we're like, wait, what game are we playing?
What? Yeah, like what?
So in 97 plate appearances with the Mariners, this guy, I'm laughing while saying it because it's absurd. 349 he's hitting. 411, 523. 523 slug for Victor Robles in this economy. 934 OPS for a 172 OPS plus. He's got 3 homers in 36 games there. Those are his first homers since 2022. He had a 401 OPS with the Nationals before coming over. Absurd. Just unbelievable. And such a good story. Top prospect at one point. Never found his footing with Washington. Change of scenery. Isn't supposed to hit this quick. This feels like a Matt Carpenter Yankees revolution. But the thing is, with Matt Carpenter, it was short lasting because he was older.
Yeah.
Robles is not old by any stretch of the imagination.
Even if this is kind of like some fever dream stretch that he falls off a cliff in a couple weeks or whatever it may be, which I'm hoping you just found something. It doesn't even matter because he gave them production for 36 games that they needed so freaking badly. Like
they're up in the division right now. There's a reason that we're talking about the teams at the top of the division. Like this Mariners team needed an influx of offense when JP and J-Rod go down. And look at it. It's Victor Robles.
It's a 170 WRC plus, dude. Like I think that alone, like he could not have a hit for the rest of the season. And I think what he has provided for them for 36 games vastly exceeds any expectation and has been a huge reason why they've been able to stay afloat. Because I mean, there's games where they really only need to score 3 runs in a game to win. And they've really struggled to do that. So, I mean, he's been a huge part of that just by swinging it the way he's been swinging it. I mean, hitting 349 is, I don't care how small the sample is. It's not 10 games. It's 36 games. It's pretty outrageous. He swiped 10 bags too. It's just funny. Baseball is such a wild sport where you can hit a $120 in 14 games with the Nats and then just nothing changes other than the fact that you go to a harder ballpark to hit in and you somehow now have a 170 WRC plus. Shows you sometimes how much it can just be a mental game and needing a reset somewhere else.
Jose Abreu freaking won an MVP in 60 games.
Yep.
I'm just thinking about the small samples. Like anything.
Yeah, I mean, this is halfway through the season. He would be an MVP candidate in a couple weeks.
Legitimately. All right, let's move over to the National League East. Phillies are tough. And my initial instinct was Alec Bohm. Because I think when you think about the Phillies offense, are you necessarily going straight to Alec Bohm when he's been one of the best hitters on this team? The thing that what kept me off it is Phillies fans know about Alec Bohm. Like if Phillies fans
Yeah.
have told the world who Alec Bohm is, that's the thing about the Phillies is they will tell everybody else when their players are good. And shout out the Phillies. I love that. And that's why you get a lot of fanfare. A lot of your guys get praise. But one guy that I think has even escaped Phillies fans' praise is Jeff Hoffman. And I know he's been the best in the bullpen, so how can he be that underrated? But I almost think when you think about the Phillies bullpen, you think about there's so many really solid arms from Matt Strahm, Orion Kirkring, Jose Alvarado has been there for a long time. But Jeff Hoffman is the train in this back end. Second in the Phillies bullpen in innings with a 1.72 ERA. He leads all relievers, all of them, not just the Phillies, all of them in F4. Top 10 overall in ERA. And among those 10, he has the second highest strikeout rate. Jeff Hoffman has been arguably the best reliever in baseball if we're looking at F4. Like the best. 1.72. He has been so otherworldly dominant that in a bullpen that has seen some guys who made the all-star team and you kind of think about the trio, no. Jeff Hoffman is the man. And that's with no disrespect to Strahm or Kirkring. But I know when I'm watching a Phillies game and Hoffman comes in the ninth, shit's over. Over.
And so unexpected, right? There's nothing. That's a guy that you could see maybe being like a pop-up Luke Weaver type of seventh inning, eighth inning guy, but to be shutting the door in the ninth the way that he has, and it's like, the fact that Jeff Hoffman, I haven't been at a game, Phillies game yet this year, or really paid attention to it, but he's got to have some sort of closer intro. Like, I don't think anybody ever expected Jeff Hoffman to have like one of those intense closer intros, and he does. So I think that's a great one. I went to one of just my favorite, like under the radar players just consistently. And I think he's doing it as well as ever this year is Edmundo Sosa, where Sosa's on pace to have, I think, the best season of his career. He is having the best season of his career. He had a 2.0 F4 in 113 games with the Cardinals back in 2021. This year, he has a 114 WRC plus, and in 64 games, so his role's been more limited. He's got a 1.9 F4. The fact that he's hitting the way that he's hitting is really impressive. But remember, they brought him in to go play defense at a bunch of different spots. He has 2 defensive runs saved at 3 different positions: shortstop, third base, and second base. He's played more at shortstop, 336 innings there, but 65 innings at third. He's already 2 defensive runs saved there, 72 innings at second base, 2 defensive runs saved there. So the fact that he's just grading out as a above average or plus defender at 3 different spots while providing above average offense, he could fall off a cliff offensively, and he's still incredibly valuable. I think he's one of the more just underrated players in the game in terms of like he's that prototypical utility type that is just so much fun. And every single year he's been a positive WAR guy. I mean, and he's I think at the best form of himself here at 28. And they've kind of needed that because remember Trey Turner missed some time, and now they can kind of plug him into 3 different spots if they ever need it. And he's a really good utility, but also contingency plan if anybody is unfortunately goes down.
That's a really good answer. So for the Phillies, we got Edmundo Sosa from Aram, and I got Jeff Hoffman. We'll move on to the Milwaukee Brewers, and it's so funny. The Brewers are the underrated team.
Yeah, the whole team.
The whole team is underrated, and there's so many young guns like Joey Ortiz or Bryce Terang or Sal Frelick, and then you think about Jackson Chourio, who is like their rookie, who has really, really improved over the last few weeks with the Brewers. Then you think about some of the pitchers, right? How have they managed to get through the season? I think everybody already knows now. Colin Rea has been the guy. He's not my most underrated guy. Tobias Myers has really great numbers. The thing is, he rarely gives them any length. So for a guy going 4 or 5 innings to start, in those 4 or 5 innings, he's been good, but I didn't really want to call him the underrated guy. So I picked a guy that I think is so underrated that nobody's going to pick him to be the most underrated, and that's why he's the most underrated, because he's boring. Rhys Hoskins. I think Rhys Hoskins has been the most underrated player on the Brewers. You know why? William Contreras, Christian Yelich. You think they're bringing the thump? And they are. Absolutely. Rhys Hoskins leads this team in home runs. He has a 107 WRC plus, fifth best on the team. He's got 57 RBIs, which is third best on the team. Leads the team in homers, like I said, with 19. I think, and I know he's striking out a lot. I know he's not this amazing player. He doesn't, he's not big up there in the F4, but on a team that really doesn't have any power, he provides the thump because Yelich isn't that 30 home run guy anymore. William Contreras has been fantastic, but he's not a 30 home run guy either,
No.
or at least he hasn't proved it this season.
He's more of a doubles guy. Yeah,
exactly.
hits the ball
Just
hard.
great hitter. They need a guy when they get all these guys on and they're stealing bases to hit them all in. And that's what Rhys Hoskins has done. And I know he's hitting 6th or 7th in the lineup. I just think he's been a very key hitter for the Brewers this year. And when you're thinking about all the fun young guys, I get it. And I could pick any of them. But I think Rhys Hoskins, because nobody would pick him, means he's the most underrated on the most underrated team.
One of the more notable names, but is underrated because he's almost hiding in plain sight. And was, after the ACL tear, there weren't a lot of teams lining up for him. And I mean, you're sticking to the trend here. We called him, I think, the most underrated free agent signing going into the year. So, I mean, just kind of sticking with that, I think that's extremely valid. And I wouldn't be shocked if he hits his stride even more down the stretch here. Mine is a kind of a defensive driven pick here, but the way he was able to hold it down for them in center field, I think he's one of the best defensive center fielders in the entire sport and continues to hold it down for them. Blake Perkins, man, I know he's not a good hitter. I understand that, but he's been close to fine offensively, which is huge because Blake Perkins is the type of guy, and he's already made some of the best catches of the year, but he's the type of guy where if he's a 90 WRC plus player, he will be a 2-win player because he is so freaking good out there. He's stolen 14 bags, but the way that he's able to go get it in center field, I think he's been just an absolute monster defensively. And that's what the Brewers are kind of built on, right? Is it's going to be pitching, defense, not as much this year with the pitching, but scrappiness, speed. They're going to manufacture runs, and they're not going to give any away. Whether it's their best pitching staff or not, their defense is going to keep them in ball games. That's a big reason why I think, they've been able to keep runs off the board despite not having, their best staff out there that we've seen, compared to previous years. 8 outs above average already. In only 696 innings. That is really impressive. 7 defensive runs saved out there in center field too. He's been spectacular. So from that lens too, just being a guy that doesn't hit very much to be a 1.7 WAR guy while also, compiling 14 stolen bases in this kind of part-time fourth outfielder role, ended up being thrusted into more action than maybe expected because of the injuries to some of their players out there in the outfield, especially since Churio isn't really a center fielder. Garrett Mitchell was missing time. I think he has been huge for them. With the defensive value that he's provided up the middle.
Absolutely. We're looking at sprint speed, 95th percentile. We're looking at outs above average. He's in the 96th percentile. And he's also in the 82nd percentile of arm strength too. So that's all you need as a great defenseman. You need to be really fast. You got to have great range due to that speed. And I'd rather you have a cannon. He's got all 3. So I love that pick, especially for a team that has won this year based on their really good defense, right? I mean, the amount of diving plays you see when you watch Brewers games is insane. Even Jake Bowers is making insane plays at first. Bryce Terang, I feel like, makes one every other day at second. Willie Adames is a savant at shortstop. Joey Ortiz is a vacuum over there at third base. But I think the best defensive player on this team is Blake Perkins in center. He just goes and gets it. Love that pick. All right, our last team before we talk about the Texas Rangers is the Los Angeles Dodgers. Who's the most underrated player on the Dodgers? So I texted all of my Dodger friends and I asked them, who's the most underrated player on your team? And none of them gave me a good answer. So I went with Daniel Hudson. Now, when I think about the Dodgers, you think offense. And I wanted to put in Teoscar Hernandez because I know that's not the first guy that comes to everybody's mind, but the dude was in the home run derby and he won it. And I just feel like everybody knows now that the Dodgers just got an absolute beast of a hitter. And Teoscar Hernandez has been a good hitter for a while. So I thought about the starting rotation, but nobody has been in there long enough and has been there underrated that I thought that they warranted it. And then I look at the bullpen and one name shines out, and that is Daniel Hudson. Leads the bullpen in ERA at 1.76. 1.76 in 46 innings. Overall, he's 11th in ERA. This guy is 37 years old. You might remember the name Daniel Hudson I mean, of course, if you've been watching Dodger games, you've seen him. But if you haven't, for whatever reason, you probably remember him helping the 2019 Nationals win a World Series. Four-seam slider mix. It's been that way forever. And this year at 37, opponents are hitting under 200 against both of them. When you look at the Dodgers bullpen, I think he's the best in it. Vesey has been awesome. Treinen, when he's on, is just unbelievably. I still think he's as nasty as literally anyone who's ever
I
lived.
still doesn't make sense to me that he has any earned runs ever. But
Literally, he looks like the most impossible pitcher ever. But I think game on the line, ninth inning, they're probably going to Daniel Hudson. So I think
give
when
me
people
Daniel
watch the
Hudson.
Dodgers in the postseason, they're gonna be like, is Daniel Hudson closing out the Dodgers win in the ninth inning, 3-2, and he gets it done. Damn right it is. Daniel Hudson, 37-year-old, 95, straight heat.
I like it. I like it. So Stone was like a name I thought of, but at the end of the day, like we were talking about him last year, he's been a highly regarded prospect. But I do think Stone deserves some love in terms of he's exceeded expectations this year and has really helped hold down the rotation. But for me, I'll go with the guy that's actually on the shelf right now. But considering the middle infield just situation that they have had, I mean, if you didn't have Miguel Rojas just giving you like solid plug and play at shortstop, I think they feel the loss of Mookie Betts and just the poor play of Gavin Lux a lot more. Like Miguel Rojas, the 1.4 WAR this year, in 67 games, right? Like that's a pace for a 3 WAR season there. He's on the shelf right now with some like forearm tightness, or he's 35. And shortstop's a very demanding position. This guy's so mechanically sound and just so natural at short that he's able to still grade out as a well above average defender at the position. But it's not just shortstop. They've played him at third. They've played him a little bit at second. Like they've moved him around the infield, and he has been really good all over. Is grading out outs above average, likes him more than DRS, but 1 DRS at shortstop, 5 outs above average at that position. At second base, he's 2 outs above or 1 out above average, but 2 defensive runs saved as well. It's a 35-year-old that you're throwing into the middle infield because your team is so banged up. Chris Taylor's not filling his role. And it's not like he's got a 69 WRC plus like he did last year, where he still was a positive WAR player. It's 105. He's slugging 406 this season. 271, 316, 406 slash line, and 207 plate appearances. Again, I know it's a part-time role, but I think this is what the Dodgers needed as bad as anything, especially with the struggles that they've gotten at other positions. This was an important spot. He picked it well back there, which they needed, and he's provided more than, I think his workload would have demanded offensively too.
So people, let us know. Fans of these teams, did we get it right? Are these the most underrated players on your team? Or maybe not so much. Let us know in the YouTube comments. And while you're down there, hit that big red subscribe button. So before we talk about the Texas Rangers, let's take a quick break. Can the defending champion Texas Rangers make the playoffs this year? Let's break it down. So Wes Jones, who does such a good job covering the Rangers for justbaseball.com, released an article today outlining what the Rangers need to do in order to make the playoffs, talking about the reinforcements coming back. Will Jacob deGrom, Tyler Mahle, will that be enough in order to vault them into the playoff conversation? So I got a little bit of spark notes from that article. We're going to talk about where they are now, what they need to do to get there, what reinforcements they're getting back, and then I'm going to throw it over to you. After hearing all that, do you think that there is a chance? Then we're going to talk about Kumar Rocker. Then we're going to end with the prospect report. So the Rangers, they're 5 games back of the division. They're 8.5 games out of the wild card. Their current record is 54-59, negative 19 run differential with 50 games left. Tyler Mahle is going to debut tonight as we're recording. Of course, we're recording on Tuesday. You're hearing this on Wednesday. So he already made his debut. And Tyler Mahle is a big addition back to this team. But he's not an automatic W, as Wes wrote in the article. 4.30 ERA, 4.27 FIP, 1.30 WHIP over his time between the Minnesota Twins, Cincinnati Reds. But Jacob deGrom is on track for an early September return. This week, sometime he's supposed to face hitters for the first time in a simulated game. And let's go back to last season. Last season, with 50 games to go, this Rangers team was 66-46 with a plus 170 run differential. But that team struggled down the stretch, only going 24-26. Now, as we sit here today, they have an 8% chance of making the playoffs according to Fangraphs. To get to about 85 wins, which I think they're going to need to keep up with the Astros and the Mariners, they would have to go 32-18 to get to 85 wins, which is a 640 winning percentage. The only team right now with a 600 winning percentage or higher are the Guardians at 604. But this Rangers team has done this before. Last season, the Rangers started off 2023 with a 35-20 record in March, April, and May. That's a 636 winning percentage. And they've got some games against their division rivals coming up, whether that be the Astros as we're sitting here today. And they also have 7 games against Seattle slated for mid-September. So after you hear that breakdown, are you telling me there's a chance?
It's so hard, man. Because they're not even playing great right now, which is the difficult part.
Don't tell that to Josh H. Smith, and don't forget the H either.
Yeah, he's been amazing this year. He's been one of the most impressive, I think, stories in baseball. Him and Jaron Duran, just the way
Josh Young is back.
Josh Young is back, which is huge, and he's been great since returning.
He rakes. He is just that burly doubles hitter who just sprays gaps. He's awesome.
And I mean, having him now in the lineup, you wouldn't have even had Josh Smith, I think, playing this much. You wouldn't have realized what you got here. So now you have Smith filling in maybe that DH role. You've got Josh Young at third. Because my one thing was to say, okay, well, are they going to be able to hit enough too? I think so. I think they're pretty good in that regard. I don't know what the return timeline is on Evan Carter, but seems like he could be back sooner rather than later.
I've heard that no,
that would
not
suck.
Coming back in the regular season at least.
Oh,
that's what I last read. It could change, but I read that about a week ago.
That would be huge because Leody Taveras has just been brutal out there, and that's been one area where they're definitely feeling it. Adolis has been frustrating too. My thing is, okay, DeGrom, a healthy DeGrom, that could be an auto win every single time. But how many times is he going to pitch? And that's assuming that he's DeGrom. That's 5 games before the season's over.
You hope.
Maybe if he returns on time, maybe 7.
And then do those 5 starts matter?
Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. So that's 5. Tyler Maui's filling into the rotation. That's great, but it's not like he's an ace. So if he's pitching like, low 4s guy, is that a needle mover for you? Like their rotation, I understand it hasn't been great. And now, Scherzer has kind of been a frustrating player to have in there. He's going to be better than Scherzer. I see it. I think this offense is going to have to go nuclear. It helps shore them up because there was too many days, I think, throughout the season where like you had a starting pitcher disadvantage. You had a schedule disadvantage before the game even started because of just the way things were set up with that rotation, with guys getting hurt and everything. They're going to hedge that now. But at the same time, like you had John Gray hit the IL. Now you have Scherzer hitting the IL with shoulder fatigue, which again, that might be a good thing for them at this point. I just don't know if they can make up that ground, but I think they can make it interesting, which is all you can really ask for, right? Like if they win, if they rattle off 5-6 in a row, it could get interesting. But they've got Houston, then they've got the Yankees on the road, then they've got the Red Sox on the road, which might be a good thing because then at that point you can control your own destiny a little bit more, beat up on the teams that are in front of you. But at the same time, it's also a difficult schedule. So that's where I'm like kind of going back and forth. But it might be good when you're this far behind that you have a chance to sweep the Yankees and the Red Sox. That'd be crazy, but they have a chance to do that. Then that would kind of get them back in the conversation. I just think it's going to be really hard.
So tell me if you agree with this. I almost think it doesn't matter who the Rangers face going forward. And the reason I say that is if the offense gets hot, like we know that this Rangers offense can't, because this is the same lineup with Wyatt Langford that was winning the World Series. They still have all the pieces there. But now Adolis Garcia hits 6th or 7th in this lineup because he has just not been the same hitter. And they've moved Wyatt Langford up, of course. So I'm not really worried about the schedule. I'm worried, can this Rangers offense heat up? Because I think that's the bottom line. Like Malley and some of these starters, they've been fine. But the reason that the Rangers aren't winning is because of their offense. Because the bullpen is fine. The starting pitching is fine. But it wasn't that different from what it was last year. And this team refused to lose games because they would just put up 7 every single game. They're heating up against left-handed pitching. But again, they have very good numbers against Hunter Brown, and they didn't really hit him. So against righties, that they've been really struggling. So I think the question is, do you still believe that this Rangers offense can achieve what they showed last year?
That I
Because I
definitely
think
do.
that's the question that we're trying to answer. And I think the bringing back Malley and bringing back DeGrom, I think that's all sounds good. And that was what was written in the article. And I think West broke it down beautifully. But the way I look at the Rangers, and the same thing I've been saying all season, is when does this world champion offense show up?
Yeah.
When are they going to show up? Because now or never. You got 50 games left. And the reason that I think that it's possible that they could potentially win this division still, what if the Mariners and the Astros showed us? Like, we keep
The
me
Astros have lost three
personally,
in a row.
the Astros have lost 3 in a row. They are objectively not playing good baseball. So while the Rangers offense has been prolific, the Astros offense doesn't scare anybody right now. And the Mariners, like, they'll win one game, they'll lose another. It's they're playing fine baseball. So the fact is that the Rangers are trying to catch all these other teams, when in reality they should have their eyes dead set on this division. And by beating the Astros on Monday, Tyler Mahle versus Framber Valdez, of course, we're recording before that matchup. Maybe the Rangers won, maybe they didn't. But can you take this series? Can you win this series against Seattle?
Have
And
to.
then
Have
can
to.
you play pretty good baseball? Because there's also a chance that maybe you don't go on this 60% win percentage run, but maybe the Astros and the Mariners go on a 45% run. So you
Yeah.
just have to be good, and it's all on the offense. So after that win, as a Josh H. Smith believer, as now a Rangers believer, can the offense show up for the rest of the season? Because if they do, I don't even care about the schedule. They can hit anybody at any given time in any ballpark, doesn't matter, as they've shown in the past.
Yeah, that's the interesting part is they kind of have two paths, both far fetched, but at least they have two paths. You look at the teams that are ahead of them. You got one in your division, so that being the Astros. But then the Rays, I mean, they sold, right? Like, and I know they've been playing actually a little bit better since they sold, but I think they're going to slow down at the end of the year, and I don't know if they have the pitching to keep it up and all of that. So you think the Rays kind of slide down a little bit, then it's the Red Sox ahead of them, and that's it. So you can start to kind of catch up with the teams in front of you. Usually that's my big concern. I think it's really just how hot can they get, because I don't think anyone's going to be outrunning them. It's just how fast can you run? Because it's really going to be kind of a race against the clock, and that clock being just how many games you have left. And I don't think other teams, to your point, like you said, even in their division, are going to be playing that well. The Mariners just aren't going to hit enough to I think win 60% of their games. And the Astros have just kind of been that up and down team all year. So just looking at the rest of the schedule, they do play the White Sox and the A's back to back, which is very fortunate.
But
Then they also play the
A's ain't
Angels.
fortunate. The A's are like good, sort of. Not really. I mean,
Yeah,
kind of.
they're not the worst. They're not the worst, but you know, they're fine. But like you have 3 games against the Angels, you have 6 games against the A's. Sorry, you have 6 games against the Angels. So 6 games against the Angels, 6 games against the A's, and 3 against the White Sox. That's not bad.
You got to go
And
win
then
all
you're
of those. Like, do
they
not keep your foot off the gas. Go
yeah,
win all of those games. You can. You easily can.
yep. And then the tough games are, you know, people ahead of them or teams ahead of them in the standings, which is great. It's not like they're playing the Dodgers, like that, where it would just be tough and there's not as much of a direct gain in beating them. Like you're playing teams that are ahead of you for the most part. So, I mean, it would take a miraculous run here, but I don't think it's impossible. I'm buying in a little bit to the fact that I won't fully rule them out. I think the fact that they also play the Mariners 6 more times, if I have that right, is also really helpful. Like you can control your own destiny as much as possible, which is, you know, very hard to do when you're out this much. So I'll say it's worth paying attention to, which I will rarely ever say for a team that's 8.5 back in the wild card with, I mean, what, how many to go? With 52 to go.
What do you think about this spin zone? The spin zone I'm thinking about in my own head. And I'm sorry I didn't even answer your question. I was too busy thinking about my spin zone. Do you think that this last chase, and Rangers fans, answer this in the comment section if you would, is like almost as fun as like being ahead in the division right now and feeling like teams are going to go catch you? Like, is this last chase after winning the World Series, like, I feel like this would be kind of fun.
Yeah,
for Rangers fans.
especially in the division where you're 5 out. You're 5 out. So like again, I think that the wild card is a sneaky other aspect, even though it's 3.5 more games. I still think it's kind of sneaky that they could climb into that too, because I think some of those teams are going to free fall. But obviously the division's a way to go. I think it kind of lights a fire under them. It is kind of hard to defend your title. People always talk about that no matter the sport. You have this carrot in front of you that's somewhat attainable, because if you do win this series here, you're going to be within 3.5 games, I believe, of the Astros. And then you play the Mariners, you win 6 of those 8 games right there. You're one series away from getting back into it. I think that combined with just seeing DeGrom back on the field, seeing Malley back on the field with Josh Young already back on the field, I'd imagine that does something for them mentally too. Because there's probably some times this year where they're like, oh man, we're just not the same team that we were last year. It's too hard to defend it. Then you see one of the best pitchers of our generation get back on the field for you, and another really talented arm get back on the field, and your young masher at third base, and you say, you know what? We're still that fucking team that just won the World Series. Like maybe this can push us and invigorate us. So I can get behind that a little bit, but I'm glad you brought up the division, because like I didn't even really realize how much tighter that actually is than the wild card. Funny enough, and I mean I don't have a ton of confidence in the Mariners with just the way that they cannot hit, like the way that offense stagnates. Like,
and I don't have a ton of confidence in the Astros either. I've been watching a ton of Astros games. I put out a future on the Astros to win the division. I ain't confident in that bet at all.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm with you. I think it could be fun. I hope they do it. I hope they take 2 out of 3 in this Astros series. Not because I care about who ultimately makes it, just because I would love to see a 3-horse race here and make it close down the stretch. But a couple good, if they win the majority of their games against their opponents here in terms of the Mariners and the Astros, and then do what they're supposed to do against those bad teams that we mentioned, I can believe in it a little bit more.
The Rangers have to be excited about this potential division chase. But they also should be excited about a certain young arm who they drafted very high in the draft, who is just dicing once again. And I'm so for the Kumar Rocker propaganda. I freaking love Kumar Rocker. We were in Omaha watching him pitch for Vandy in person. I said, that's the greatest pitcher in college ever. I mean, he was just dominating the bravado on the mound. He owned that mound. I love the way he operated. And a lot of weird stuff. He got indie ball. He gets drafted, 10th of the Mets, and then, goes back to school or goes to indie ball. I don't really know the full story. All I know is that I think Kumar Rocker, when he's right, can be a dominant pitcher in this league. What's the sitch? What's going on right now?
He looks as good as ever, which is so encouraging, right? So the way it ended up happening was kind of towards the end of his collegiate career, just velo was kind of down, just didn't look like he was feeling great. Still goes 10th to the Mets overall. And medical issues, like I don't know all of the logistics there, but enough to where the Mets are like, we're not going to make a substantial offer. He's like, all right, then I'll just not sign and I'll put myself back in the draft next year instead of going back to school. Throws an indie ball, dominates in 20 innings. Rangers see enough, make a very surprising pick to take him 3rd overall, underslotted him, but really liked what they saw. And he looks pretty good in his pro debut. They had him go in the Arizona Fall League where he was fine there. And then he threw about another 20-something innings in high A before finding out in May that he's going to need to undergo Tommy John surgery. I personally think, and it's speculating, but I personally think that he was throwing through some issues between the whatever the medical issue was with the Mets, and then also just the velocity just not totally being there. It did come back a little bit more in high A, but he gets this fixed, right? He gets his Tommy John, and he makes as quick of a recovery from Tommy John as you're going to see. It's about 13 months. He was back, and he looks like the best version of Kumar Rocker we've seen. I think he focused on in his recovery, and we talked to him on the call up, and he talked a lot about focusing on the mechanics and things like that. But usually when guys come back off of Tommy John, they don't throw strikes the same way, because you got to almost like repattern all your moves. You got to try to get comfortable again. It's a new arm, and you also weren't throwing for a year. He's come right back and poured in strikes. But it's not just that. He's sitting 98, like sitting. And his last time out, he was sitting 95 before. Last time out, averaged 98.5 with the fastball, touched 100 twice. And what I'm seeing that's most amazing about this whole thing is his delivery looks as smooth as it's ever looked. His ability to fill up the zone has been as impressive as any. I know it's smaller sample, but it's been as impressive as any stretch I've seen from him. 72% strike rate. but he's also got a field of pitch that I think is even better than we saw at his peak in college, where he's got two different fastballs. He's got a four-seamer at the top that's dominating from a lower release. Then he's got this two-seamer that runs late in on the hands of righties. That's disgusting. So two separate fastballs there. And then he's got that slider that's always been a banger, but now he's found a way to manipulate it into like three different pitches. It's like a harder cutter at 89 to 90. Then he's got this more true slider at about 86, 80, 87. And then he's got more of a depthier, like hybrid slurvy type of pitch at 84, 85. And all three of them look like the same grip that he just manipulates a little bit. And all three are disgusting. So he's got variations of a slider. He's got two distinct fastballs, and he's throwing harder than he's ever thrown. I'm floored with Kumar Rocker. I'm hoping he can stay healthy, and that's the big thing. But this guy, I mean, in terms of sheer talent, what I'm seeing stuff wise, this is a top 15 pitching prospect in baseball and climbing, I think, as long as he can sustain this.
Is there any chance he can help the Rangers this year, or this is a next year thing?
I think it's possible if they wanted to do it. He's already in Double-A, right? And there's 7 innings in Double-A. It's 2 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 8 Ks. I don't know how they want to manage, his recovery and things like that. And I don't know if they want to throw him into high stress. But in terms of just ability, like what I'm seeing on the mound stuff-wise, he could throw out of the bullpen and get big league hitters out. No doubt about it in my mind with those fastballs and that slider. So I don't know if they'll do it. I think it's pretty far-fetched just because they're going to want to be careful with him considering how much they invested in him. But if they're making a push and they need another bullpen arm, I think he could go into that bullpen and be dominant. I mean, that fastball is going to play in the big leagues for sure.
So good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's been through
college guys that, go through some weird shit and that there's talent in there, and then they just find it again and they're right back to just rifling fastballs at 100. Shout out Kumar Rocker, man. This is awesome.
And one last thing, I'll be honest, I thought because of just how much fanfare he had as a collegiate player and being a first-round prospect at a high school and just a lot of attention his way and just being such a big name, I thought he'd maybe be a little bit more like standoffish and, maybe not be the nicest dude in the world. And maybe that's on me for assuming based on just a player's background. He was such a nice, soft-spoken, just cool dude in that interview that we did in spring training, and very humble, but also very confident. And it felt very good about what he was going to look like when he came back. But, your players are always going to say that, but just kind of the way he talked about it, the way he'd kind of been just humbled by what had happened, but also felt like it's unlocked an area for him where he can just now turn into the best version of himself too. I really was buying what he was selling. And that's why I've been so quick to see these 7 innings and say, this is different. And that the data backs it up, then having the anecdotal side of it to back it up too. And this guy's, there's no doubt in the talent, 6'5", 235, moving like that on the mound. This is a really exciting development for the Rangers.
So when's the Kumar article coming out? Because people got to ingest that.
Oh yeah. The second the top 100 update comes out this week, that's going to be one of my one of the first things I dive into is a little Kumar Rocker breakdown.
Phenomenal. All right. It's time. Drum roll, please. The famous prospect report where I just get to sit here and do absolutely nothing. I kind of did absolutely nothing for the Kumar Rocker segment, but I'll just keep doing it. Aram, who are the minor leaguers that people have to keep on their radar right now, breaking in the minor leagues, pitching really well? Can they help a team when September call-ups are coming up soon? Floor is yours.
A little bit of everything. Got 3 players that could help a team, and then 2 guys at the lower levels that have really stood out. I'll start with Dalton Rushing, who catcher in the Dodgers organization. He is a really, really good bat, has come a long way defensively, where he looks like he's at least an average defensive catcher too. And the question has just always kind of been, okay, well, where does he fit in? Maybe he split some time with Will Smith at the highest level. They clearly had no interest in trading him at the deadline because of how good he is with the bat and how far he's come with the glove. Just got promoted to AAA. But through the stretch that got him promoted to AAA, his last 19 games, and he's been good all year, but his last 19 games, 7 homers. He's slashing 292, 373, 639. That's 1,012 OPS. He runs one of the lower chase rates in the minor leagues. He elevates consistently. So I like the 7 home runs.
Would you say
he's 639 over his last 19 games?
Oh,
mash it. Here's an interesting wrinkle. He started to play a little bit of left field over the last couple weeks. He's never played left field. He's only caught, and they've wanted to develop him as a catcher because he didn't have a lot of reps at catcher at Louisville because he was behind Henry Davis. This is interesting because why else would you throw him in the outfield right now? Unless you think maybe he can be an option for you at the big league level down the stretch. We'll see. It's only going to get easier for him to hit in the PCL. So he's going to go up there, see if he plays some more left field. But he's been one of the best hitters in the minor leagues over his last 19 games. And all of a sudden, Dodgers are getting him some reps in left. Just something to think about.
My only feedback, fantastic breakdown per usual. Normally people do last 20 games. What was the 20th game? Just terrible. Like, why did you up 19?
Sorry, I was going from July 1st. If I do last 20 games, the numbers drop. Actually, the OPS drops all the way to 1,006 from 1,012. So
no wonder you're just cherry picking.
Yeah, just cherry picking, manipulating the stats.
I just thought it was funny. You kept saying over the last 19 games. I was like,
that is funny.
You go 0 for 8 with 8 Ks in that 20th game or something.
I didn't even think about that. I was just looking from July 1st. But that is funny. I'm glad we clarified that because his game was pretty fine on June 29th.
How do you do?
Hey, June 29th, it was 1 for 4 with an RBI. Yeah, not bad. Sacrifice fly as well.
Pretty good. We're not cherry picking here.
No, we will never do that. And especially on these segments.
You could say for you. For me, I might do something to fit a narrative, but that's just me, and everybody listening knows that I would do that. But I want to make it clear that you won't, Jack won't. I might. Actually, no one screw that. Jack would. Jack totally would. Me and Jack would, you won't.
I'll take it. Another guy that just got called up. AAA over the last few weeks. Late start to the season for the Astros because of an injury, but had a great year last year. Zach DeZenzo just got promoted to the big leagues. Not very long after making his return to action. He missed the first few months of the season, didn't return to action until June 18th in AA, quickly mashed through AA, and then got up to AAA. Also, since July 1st, this is 23 games, he's mashing 297, 390, 516. Plays mostly first base and third base, but has come a long way at third base. It's a 907 OPS, 12% walk rate, 20% K rate. This guy hits the shit out of the ball. Like, really, really high EV, some of the higher that you're going to find in the minor leagues. He's walking as much as we've ever really seen him walk, so that's been a great improvement as well, and making as much contact as we've seen him make. So DeZenzo's a guy that I think is long been viewed as kind of the future at third base if they don't retain Bregman. But I think now with Loperfido going out, this is a guy that they feel like can kind of help them at the big league level right now. And I'm excited to see what he does because coming off of that injury and returning, like, he looks like the best version of himself that we've seen. And it gets even better if you look at his last 12 games. This is the last 50 at bats for round numbers, 380, 466, 700 slash line with 4 home runs. So he's riding a hot streak as he gets up there. And it's power to all fields. And I think he's going to love the Crawford boxes.
Damn. Yeah, the Astros need a little spark in that lineup, and hopefully he can do something. It's weird that they promoted him so quickly, though.
It kind of shows, I think how badly they kind of want someone to give them that spark. And I do think he can do that, though. Another guy that might provide a spark for a wild card contender is Adrian Del Castillo for the Diamondbacks. Catcher, not the best defensive catcher, but he's come a long way in that regard. Obviously, they don't need him to be the best defensive catcher. They need him to mash. And he's been one of the more underrated bats in the minor leagues this year. He was a big performer at the University of Miami and slipped a little bit, but still was an early round draft pick. It seems to have really come together for him. Yes, it's the PCL, but the EVs are plus 105 mile per hour, 90th percentile exit velocity. He's not striking out at all. 17% strikeout rate, 11% walk rate. On the season, 319, 403, 608 slash line. Again, I know it's the PCL, but over his last 30 games, 314, 426, 636 slash line. That's 1,061 OPS with 10 home runs in that span and as many walks as strikeouts. He elevates consistently. And I do think this is a guy that, as he hits lefties well, but getting up to the big leagues could at least be a platoon bat for them in the DH role, catch on the days that they want to give Moreno off, maybe fill in on occasion if they ever need at first base. Remember, they lost Christian Walker. So I think he's going to end up filling that DH role more, and they'll have Bell maybe playing some first, but they just need some more mashers. And Del Castillo has been a monster offensively. And the fact that he's been hitting sliders and breaking balls as well as he has overall this season makes me feel like he could actually make a smoother transition to the big leagues than, maybe people would expect from a guy that, isn't a top 100 prospect.
This comes at an interesting time because Gabriel Moreno suffered a groin strain in
Yeah.
that last game against the Guardians. And there's a chance that he spends some
So he's
time
gonna
on
catch.
the IL because
Then
I was reading
I
this
didn't even
CBS,
realize that.
I was reading the CBS Sports article and Baseball Prospectus's recovery timetable, whatever that means. But shout out Baseball Prospectus for having it. They're predicting 28 days that he's going to be out.
Wow. Okay.
28 days
I
without
totally
Gabriel
missed that.
Moreno. Yeah, so that's why I was like, are you bringing it up because of that? Because I feel like he could be up like in a couple of days now because
No,
their
so
backup catcher is
he's
Jose
up.
Herrera, and like that's not. I mean, respect to
No,
Jose Herrera, but like, come on.
he's gonna catch for them then. Like I expect he's gonna get up there, and I think he's probably gonna get promoted within the next few hours as we're recording this. Like he has nothing left to prove offensively. Again, he's not the best defender, but he's good enough now where you don't want to go with Herrera. It's a guy that's going to hit for you. And then again, if he's performing and Moreno comes back, still a guy that can kind of fill in these DH at parts role and come off the bench and mash a little bit too. But he's been awesome this year, and I mean, at least and it sucks because Moreno's been so great, like 800 OPS over the last couple months.
He's a dog.
But he's just finally was putting it together. It really stinks, but at least they have a contingency plan there and a guy that can really mash in Del Castillo. Two lower level guys, Max Clark.
I'm excited to hear about the guys nobody's ever heard of, but then you started off with Max Clark.
Yeah, sorry, started with Max Clark. I know the next guy most people haven't heard of, so I'm excited about that. But Max Clark, I mean, I'd be remiss not to talk about him. Since he got brought up to high A, he's been an absolute monster. But he's just been great in general. Since the high A promotion, it's only been 10 games, but 10 games in high A, slashing 366, 435, 512 for the Tigers high A affiliate, West Michigan. I mean, remember, this is a guy that's speedster, elite glove in center field. But if he's starting to hit like this too, look out. Still needs to be a little bit better against secondary stuff, and I think that's going to be a challenge for him as high A pitchers start to execute the scouting report. But the last 30 games for this guy, he's really coming along. 330, 419, 530 slash line. The approach has been great. He's striking out below 20%. He's walking at a 12% clip. He's starting to tap into a little bit more power. So it's exciting to see Max Clark start to come into his own here and make the transition to high A pretty smoothly. Luke Adams, Brewers prospect, first baseman / third baseman. But I think he profiles best at first long term, but mostly playing third right now. This dude, I think, is one of the most underrated power bats in the lower minors. He hits the ball so freaking hard. He just turned 20 years old. His last 30 games has an OPS over 1,000. One of the best approaches as well. In that span, a chase rate of 9%.
Whoa.
90th percentile of 107 miles per hour. This dude, it's tape measure shots. And it's kind of a loud operation, but he controls it all so well. He's 6'4", 210. He hits the ball hard. In terms of the blend of exit velocities, contact rates, and chase rates, he's up there with some of the best of them in the lower levels in the minor leagues. And I might be a little spoiler alert of someone that you may never have really heard of that may sneak their way into our top 100 list. He's a monster, and he has only gotten better and better and better as the season has progressed. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets promoted to Double A Biloxi sooner rather than later.
What are his card prices on eBay right now?
I don't even know if
you
he
sold
has
me into my next purchase because this is one of those guys where you will laud him. He will be on the top 100. He'll rise through the ranks. He'll be on the Brewers. He'll rake. And I'll be like, Aram, did you ever get his cards? He'd be like, no, I forgot. I'll be like, I did.
You actually just spurred a good thought for me. I probably will buy his cards. They're going for $20. Bowman Chrome Auto, $20 on eBay.
I will be purchasing. Probably more than one.
Yeah, I'm telling you, dude. I love this dude's bat. So
Luke Adams is the name, right?
Luke Adams. Crazy Adams. Couple arms real quick. Jackson Ferris, Dodgers org. 3 earned runs in his last 34 innings pitched. They got him. They got him in the Michael Busch deal. Like that's an 0.79 ERA and a 0.68 WHIP. Just got promoted to Double A. Matt Tugboat Wilkinson will not slow down. 25 innings pitched, 11 hits. That's a 128 opponent batting average, a 178 ERA. I love this dude. I DM'd him to come on the podcast. He didn't answer. It's one of the only guys that I've actually just directly DM'd to come on the call up. Like, and didn't get back yet. I get it. He's probably just inundated with beautiful women and smart men just reaching out to him and just baseball people just trying to learn how to pitch like Tugboat Wilkinson. Travis Sakura. And Wilkinson, the Guardians org. Travis
Wait,
Sikora
before you move on quickly, just to that point about I'm Giants fans, San Francisco Giants fans listening. If you are listening this deep into the podcast, I freaking love you. And number two, I have a favor to ask. Help me get in contact with Tyler Fitzgerald. I have DM'd to this guy. I'm trying to get him on the show. I want to talk to him because we haven't really covered his incredible runs so far with the Giants, where he was the first rookie to ever hit 5 home runs in 5 straight games for the Giants. He's got like 12 home runs in 50 games. He's been unbelievable for them. I want to talk to the man so badly, and he won't answer any of my messages. So if
probably not even
anybody
looking
on
at
Twitter,
social.
or if anybody knows him somehow, if you could get him in contact, we want Tyler Fitzgerald, the San Francisco Giants, on this show.
Just want to gas him. That's it.
We just want to gas him. I just want to ask him how much
hype
of a
him up.
beast he is.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. It's one of the crazier runs we've seen this year, other than his teammate Elliot Ramos. Travis Sikora, Nationals pitching prospect, funky delivery, and they needed more arms at the upper levels, and they got one here. And Sikora, who, I mean, at the lower levels, I should say, and they've got one in Sikora. Harlan Susana's really broken out too, who came in that James, along with James Wood in that Juan Soto deal, Robert Hassel and others, Kenzie Gore, of course. But Harlan Susana's been awesome. Sikora been very underrated throughout the year. 3 pitches for a strike that are all nasty. It's a fastball at 95 that picks up ridiculous in-zone whiff rates, a slider in the low 80s that has been dominant with crazy chase and in-zone whiff numbers. And he's got a splitter that's gross as well. Opponents are rating $1.65 against him on the year. Over his last 4 starts, a 1.59 ERA, 30 strikeouts over his last 17 innings with just 8 walks. And then the last but not least, I want this guy to be good so freaking bad because I can already see all the headlines of like, oh, like, who needs velocity? This guy's bucking the trend, kind of like the Ryan Yarborough thing, except he got like DFA'd right after. I think there was a feature piece on him. Sean Sullivan, Colorado Rockies pitching prospect, throws 87, and he has been one of the most unhittable pitchers in minor league baseball since his AA promotion, has been dominant. It's a funky release. The changeup is disgusting from that. It's a tunneling nightmare with the slider as well. His last 4 starts, Pete, 19 innings, 27 strikeouts, 3 walks, 1 earned run. Sean's at
throwing 80 strikeouts.
It's crazy. He's 6'4", 200. He's a funk machine, and it just no one can hit him.
I like that funk machine. That's a good one.
No one can hit him. On the year, 31% strikeout rate, 3% walk rate. There's your prospect report. I need this guy to be the next Jamie Moyer, but with Ks. I need Sean Sullivan to just break all of these analytic department brains and just dominate at 87, especially since it's going to be a Colorado Rockies pitching prospect. Like, come on. I need this.
So that'll do it for this episode of the Just Baseball Show. Hopefully everybody enjoyed listening. As always, we'll be back tomorrow. For Aram and I'm Peter Apple. The best way to support the Just Baseball Show is to give us 5 stars, whether that be on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you've been enjoying the show, truthfully, it is the best way to support. And if you could leave a written review, that'd be awesome. And also, if you've been watching these on YouTube, hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks, code Just Baseball for all of you gamblers out there. Make sure to check out Wes Jones's article about the Texas Rangers that is linked in the episode description. I stole the Spark Notes directly from him. All credit to Wes Jones. He's fantastic. Love having him on as a writer. And of course, for Aram and I'm Peter Apple. I know I said our names again, but with that, thank you, everybody.